Imagine a contractor wins a complex, multi-year design-build project. The price is agreed upon, the contract is signed, and hands are shaken today. But the actual project doesn't finish today. The construction might run for 3 years, meaning the heavy materials, specialized equipment, and labor required won't actually be procured until long after that initial price was locked in. So what happens if a sudden global supply chain shock doubles the price of steel halfway through the build? Someone has to bear that significant financial burden. If a contract lacks a mechanism to manage this chronological time gap, contractors face a terrible choice: either build heavy price buffers into their initial bids, or win the tender and risk bankruptcy when inflation hits during execution. FIDIC Sub Clause 13.7 provides a structural risk-sharing solution designed specifically to address this kind of volatile market inflation. Before we break down exactly how this clause saves projects from financial ruin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. But there is a major catch. Subclause 13.7 does not automatically apply just because it exists in the standard FIDIC rulebook. It only activates if a specific document called a Schedule of Cost Indexation is explicitly included in the contract. You can think of a contract missing the schedule like an unplugged machine. The buttons are there, the labels are printed, but pressing them does absolutely nothing because the electrical connection was never made. Failing to include the schedule at the tender stage is a fatal procurement error that secretly shifts the entirety of the inflation risk onto the contractor. If the schedule is included, you might assume the contractor has to submit piles of receipts and audit every individual supplier invoice to prove their specific losses. That is how traditional contract claims work, but Subclause 13.7 operates differently. Instead of a dollar-for-dollar reimbursement of actual spent costs, the clause uses an agreed approximation. It relies on a predetermined mathematical formula linked to standardized market indices. Relying on an objective formula prevents subjective arguments over whether a procurement manager negotiated well or poorly, significantly streamlining the monthly payment certification process. Let's look at how this equation actually works. The core calculation compares baseline index values established at the tender date against current market index values, splitting those out to track the movement for distinct inputs like steel, cement, and fuel. To find the right current index, the contract applies the 49-day rule. Government statistical agencies often publish economic data late. This rule establishes a consistent, practical lag, telling the engineer to look back exactly 49 days from the end of the payment period to grab a finalized, workable data point. Next, the formula applies coefficients, which are essentially weightings. A highway project will require a substantial coefficient for fuel and bitumen, whereas a high-rise building will demand a heavy weighting for steel and labor. You will also notice a fixed portion coefficient, usually represented by the letter A. This locks down a specific percentage of the contract price, representing items like overhead and profit, shielding it from the inflation calculation entirely. Aligning these specific coefficients with the actual cost structure of the project creates a fair, objective adjustment multiplier for every single payment cycle. Of course, in the real world, official current index data is sometimes entirely unavailable at the exact time a payment certificate is due. To keep the contractor's cash flowing without delay, the engineer can apply provisional indices, but these are temporary placeholders. They must be recalculated and reconciled in later certificates the moment the official data drops. There is also a strict no double counting rule. Work that is already being paid out at actual current market costs, such as day work or specific variations, cannot be run through the indexation formula. Without highly disciplined record keeping and a live cost adjustment register tracking these details, these administrative realities quickly spiral into significant overpayments. What happens if a delayed contractor remains on a project a full year past their deadline? Do they continue to profit from rising market inflation during their own delay? To stop that scenario, FIDIC includes a strict commercial guardrail known as the delay freeze rule. This is a line graph illustrating how the rule applies. If a contractor misses the deadline, future adjustments must be calculated using whichever index is more favorable to the employer, either the index from the scheduled completion date or the current index. There is a vital administrative caveat. If the contractor is granted a valid extension of time, the freeze reference date must be shifted accordingly, so the contractor is not unfairly punished for employer-caused delays. The delay freeze rule ensures Sub Clause 13.7 functions as a bilateral protection tool, preventing employers from subsidizing the higher costs of a late contractor. We operate in a modern reality defined by geopolitical conflicts, energy crises, and massive supply chain disruptions. In this environment, this mechanism acts as a primary safeguard for project solvency. Before we wrap up, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next contract breakdown. Relying on fixed price guesswork in volatile markets forces contractors to absorb uncontrollable costs. A properly drafted Subclause 13.7 replaces that danger with structured, predictable transparency. Inflation risk is simply too significant to be left to assumption. It must be openly priced and precisely allocated and administered through clear contractual machinery before the project ever begins.